Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May I ask you please to take your seats? The 14th and final sitting of the 107th session of the International Labour Conference is called to order. Our order of business this afternoon is as follows. We shall begin with the second report of the Credentials Committee and the submission, noting and approval of the committee's proposals. Next, we will proceed to the submission, discussion and approval of the report of the committee on the applications of standards. And finally, we will conclude our sitting with the closing ceremony of our conference. We begin this afternoon's proceedings with the second report of the Credentials Committee, which can be found in Provisional Record number 3C. Please allow me to quickly introduce the officers of this committee, who are already seated on the podium. Mr. Michael Hobby from New Zealand, Chairperson. Mr. Fernando Yelanes Martinez from Mexico, Employer Vice Chairperson. And Mr. Jens Erik Ort from Denmark, Worker Vice Chairperson. I now give the floor to the Chairperson of the Credentials Committee, Mr. Hobby, who will present the committee's second report.
Okay, if anybody was here last year, I solemnly promise I will not fall off the podium this time. No. Good afternoon, President, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to present to the conference the first and second reports of the Credentials Committee, which you'll find in the Provisional Records 3B and 3C. But why should you care? Why should you read it? Why does it matter? I want to tell you why. The mandated role of the Credentials Committee is to examine, obviously, the credentials of delegates and advisers and any objections challenging those credentials or relating to a government's failure to accredit a complete tripartite delegation to the conference. We also examine complaints regarding the non-payment of travel and subsistence expenses for employers and all workers delegates, allegations of serious and manifest imbalance between the tripartite groups in the delegation, and allegations that an accredited delegate or advisor has been prevented from attending the conference due to an act or omission by the government. And we monitor any situation arising from those objections or complaints where we've requested a member state to take some action and report back on how they will resolve those situations. So again, why do we do this? Why does it matter? Well, simply put, the whole point of this conference is that freely chosen, independent, tripartite participants are able to travel here to Geneva each year to participate in its policy and standard-setting activities. What the conference does affects the whole world of work, and it cannot function without the effective participation of the key players in the world of work, the workers, the employers and the governments. Under the Constitution, member states, by virtue of their membership of the ILO, promise to make this happen. And if those conditions aren't fulfilled, and they don't, then the conference is basically compromised. So all of the things we as the Credentials Committee do are to ensure that members meet their constitutional obligations so that this conference and the ILO functions as intended in the true spirit and reality of tripartite participation. So the question then is, how are we, or rather you, meeting those obligations? You'll see in the report that during this session of the conference we examined 40 cases. That's up from 36 last year. And as you can also see, those cases comprise 3 ongoing situations of monitoring, 27 objections and 10 complaints. And I want to highlight some specific issues arising from those cases for your attention. First, we received 5 objections relating to the accreditation of incomplete delegations to the conference. But among those, a large number alleged a lack of consultation, a lack of agreement, or both. And the committee is concerned at this situation. As I said, member states have an obligation to hold consultations with their most representative organisations and actively facilitate agreement on the nomination of delegations so that they are the most representative. But a particular concern for us is a situation where governments only accredit themselves to the conference. In our view, if you're coming here as a government without social partners, that is a clear breach of your obligations, and it calls into question the legitimacy of your participation at the conference. So consequently, we have considered as a committee that the possibility of being seized with incomplete cases automatically, together with the general question of how to ensure full tripartite participation and improved compliance by member states with their obligations, warrants serious deliberation by the governing body. 2 cases before us were sufficiently serious to recommend to the conference the continuation of monitoring, namely Djibouti and the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. But in the case of Somalia, the committee decided on the basis of the information before it that the monitoring measures should be discontinued. However, in another case, that of Mauritania, the committee considered that monitoring measures are necessary. The committee also received 9 complaints alleging government's failure to pay travel and subsistence expenses and raising the issues of serious and manifest imbalances between the number of government advisers and employers and workers advisers. And here we note that the conference can only work properly if there is a sufficient number of advisers present in the 3 groups of the conference and if there is an adequate balance between them. We also received 1 complaint alleging that an accredited worker delegate had been prevented from attending the conference due to an act or omission of the government, and we view those cases most seriously. The other thing in the broader context, this is my 2nd year on this committee, and we remain deeply concerned at the number of situations that appear routinely before the committee for failure to comply with their key obligations. Our mandate, as I said, is to ensure the application of the principle of tripartism. And the cases before us and their history indicates that member states need to improve their understanding of and compliance with their obligations as ILO members. Another issue of note to us and some concern is the size of the conference itself. The size of delegations to the conference has grown continuously to reach an all-time high of 6,438 accreditations this year. This might reflect an increased interest of the tripartite constituents in the work of the conference, but in any case, we are concerned at the impact of this on the efficient functioning of the conference. And I know we've all experienced the issues around crowding and access to delegation and committee rooms and such. So we reiterate our view we expressed last year that there needs to be an in-depth analysis of all the current accreditation arrangements and practices to identify possible areas for improvement. And we also think that practical arrangements, such as direct communications with member states, need to be undertaken regarding the need to maintain the size of their delegation within reasonable limits. The committee also calls upon member states to evaluate the specific functions of the individuals they send, so that they only send those with a direct role and function at the conference. I'll turn now to issues of gender. This is a report full of some regrets, I must say. We also regret that, despite the fact we are closing in on the ILO centenary, participation at the conference remains primarily a male affair, with only 32.7% of women among the accredited delegates and advisers. Looking at the regional statistics, we see that in the delegations from the African region, women represent 24.4%, in the Americas 38.8%, in Asia and the Pacific 28.9%, and in Europe 44.3%. So in this connection, we can but urge all member states to reach at least the 30% minimum of women's participation in their delegations, and particularly regarding the positions of leadership within those delegations, as we try and move towards the ultimate goal of gender parity. That's pretty much all I have to say. I move now to thanks. I'd like, in closing, to express my sincere appreciation to the Vice Presidents, Fernando Ilanes Martinez for the employers, and Jens Eric Ort for the workers. We truly worked as a team on this task, and we worked very well. And this report is our unanimous view. I also want to express, on behalf of the committee, our sincere and specific thanks to our Secretariat, whose members worked long and hard throughout the duration of the conference to support us in what could not be described as conditions of decent work. This includes the translators and interpreters, without whose assistance we could not have completed our work, particularly those required to translate me into English. Mr. President, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention. I commend this report to you, and I wish you all a safe return home at the conclusion of the conference.
Thank you, Mr. Hobby. The Credentials Committee has unanimously adopted its report and requests the conference to take note of its content and to adopt the proposals put forward in paragraphs 12, 29 and 82 of Provisional Record number 3C relating to Djibouti, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and Mauritania, respectively. In accordance with Article 26 bis, paragraph 7, and Article 26 quarter of the standing orders of the conference, the proposal shall be adopted without discussion. May I take that the conference takes note of the report and adopts the three proposals? The proposals are adopted. That concludes our discussion of the report of Credentials Committee. We have what? That concludes this discussion of the report of the Credentials Committee. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the officers of the committee for their excellent work. I hear that the atmosphere in the committee was very positive and that the work was carried out in the spirit of fruitful collaboration. Thank you again to all.